Hey everyone, I'm Nicholas Kontopoulos, VP of Marketing for Twilio. I'm responsible for looking after marketing across Asia, Pacific, Japan, and I'm really thrilled to be here today for another edition of Decoding AI. Today we're going to be taking a deeper dive into the fascinating world of AI and specifically in retail and e-commerce. Integrating AI technologies in retail is basically revolutionizing the industry, offering really unprecedented opportunities for growth, for improved efficiencies, and ultimately helping businesses grow their revenue. According to a recent report by Gartner, over 75% of retailers plan to adopt AI by 25 to enhance their customer experience and operational efficiencies. So this data point really underscores the importance and the critical role AI is going to be playing in shaping the future of retail and e-commerce moving forward. I'm particularly excited today because I have an exceptional guest for you all today. Sharon Gai, an esteemed AI expert and author, will be joining me today, sharing insights that she's gathered over her career. She'll explore the rise and use cases of generative AI and how to leverage AI for growth within the retail sector. So let's prepare to explore the future of retail and e-commerce. And Sharon, welcome to Decoding AI. Let's kick off with maybe just you sharing some insights on your background and who you are.
Sure. Thanks so much, Nicholas, for that awesome introduction. And so my name is Sharon Gai. I've been sort of knee deep in this AI space. Worked for several different e-commerce platforms within also the cloud space, telecom. And when I left Alibaba, I entered into a US company that was the largest seller on Amazon. So I got to see sort of the e-commerce landscape on both sides of the pond. I came out with a book shortly thereafter, and now I am joining folks like yourself and Twilio in figuring out how AI can be best leveraged for all the different clients and brands that these tech companies are facing, because a lot of people are wondering how best to leverage AI today.
It's exciting times, and your background sets us up perfectly for this session. And I love the fact you've got that East and West background because, again, AI has been evolving at a rapid pace in Asia and as well as in the West. And I'd love to explore sort of your thoughts on that as we move forward. But obviously AI has been around for some time. Again, when I remember, and I've said this on the previous episodes, it's not a new capability. In actual fact, the term AI was coined back in 1953, machine learning 3 years later. And obviously within the retail sector, we've seen AI being utilized. But obviously with generative AI and predictive AI coming together, it's creating whole new areas of opportunity. I'd love to explore this with you. Maybe to get started, how did AI first start making an impact in the retail industry in your experience, and where have you seen AI being most impactfully adopted within retail and helping retailers transform the way they operate or engage their customers?
Sure. So the most, I think, relevant part of AI, or the first pioneer, if you will, was probably Amazon in the 1990s, the 2000s. That was the first whiff of it when they developed the For You page or the recommendation engine, where even today, if you're shopping on Amazon, there's a section that says, if you bought this item, then other customers also bought this. And so if you want to add that into your basket, then we'll give you a discount, and then you can click order and you'll have a much more holistic, wholesome order, get everything that you need. So that really appeared very, very early on in the early 90s. And then in 2012, a very prominent example that we always highlight in the retail space is from Target. There's a journalist called Charles Duhigg. He wrote this book where he described predictive analytics, and that's what it was termed back in the day, where I don't know if you know this example, but basically the statistician in Target discovered that these group of women, teenage girls actually, are very likely to be able to be buying lotion for pregnant mothers, large bags, diapers. And so they would send these coupons to their houses. And that stirred a lot of controversy because you had all these angry fathers who are like, why are you giving so many coupons to my teenage daughter that's 16 years old? She is nowhere near the age of having a child, except months later, they actually they were pregnant, and they actually had started to actually buy these things. And that caused a stir in American news because that was when a retailer was actually dictating or telling these families these family plans for these kids. But it was actually a predictive engine that Target ran that, based on purchasing behavior of these women, they predicted that they will most likely be pregnant, and so they'll need this other set of products. And so that was another. It caused another big splash. And if you fast forward even more, these retailers have now since employed a lot of these engines, and it's quite common now if you're browsing through Amazon, and if you're located in Singapore, shopping on shopping on Shopee or Lazada, where there are SKUs that are recommended to you that you probably do need, or that is probably relevant to you, and all of that is catered to you from previous purchasing behavior. So you had most likely searched for a certain brand, searched for a certain product category, that the platform then was able to identify your actual demographic, your age, what type of family you live in, how many kids maybe you would have, to then suggest you more products that are relevant to you. So that is now what we call personalization in a broad stroke in the retail space. And a company that does this very, very well is Alibaba, where I used to work. I sat in the Tmall team. So unbeknownst to a lot of people in the West, Tmall is the Amazon of China, but its GMV is actually about 3x that of Amazon globally. And that's just because of the sheer size of the Chinese population, how much people shop on e-commerce as well. China has the highest e-commerce penetration rate around the world at around 50%, while the US, the UK trickles around 20% or less. I think the benefit of such a platform is when you have both depth and breadth in gathering all of this data, you're able to experiment a lot. And that is the major difference that I've seen between a Chinese e-commerce platform versus an American one, is the amount of experiments that can be run when you have so many different types of customers. And so a lot of brick and mortar retailers are day by day always making strides to digitize, to unite their different cloud silos, to unite data points from their offline and online experiences so that they have a more colorful and holistic picture of their end customers. And the online players are doing that very well because they are able to capture so much data as nascent digital companies. But a lot of them you're seeing also wants to grab some market share from the offline space. So they're also going the other direction. They're also going offline. And when they're doing that, they're trying to do the same thing as the traditional brick and mortar.
I think the point you made about the sort of the blending of the physical and digital worlds into what, a term that I heard many years back being coined, phygital, is definitely what we're seeing across the globe. And this is a global sort of change we're seeing. But I think the point that, and you obviously have, as I said, that benefit of operating across, global capacity, US, Canada, North America, and in Asia. I would say in Asia that it's important for those folks that are in the US or Europe that are listening to this. AI is not universally the same globally, and really understanding, more importantly, the consumers and the employees serving those consumers, and how how far along they are in terms of digital adoption. I think Asia and I would say China would be leading the way here, even in this region. Pretty digitally savvy consumers, and I would love to get your thoughts on that. I think you sort of gave an insight there based on just even whether it's a Gen Z to a Gen X. Would you agree? I think in terms of Asia, you see a very digitally savvy consumer base and ultimately therefore employee base, and that's something that it's important for any business that's global to really understand the sort of differences in terms of maturity as they build out their go-to-market strategies. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. So there's this stat, I think it's that someone in Asia will spend on average on their phone twice as the number of hours as somebody in North America. I mean, you can say that that's a good thing because it's good for all the companies, but it's also a bad thing because you don't want to spend so much time on your screen. So, depending on which side of the coin you are in, it's a good or bad thing. But it is very, yeah, that is definitely true. Especially the Chinese consumer population, a lot of the services that whether you're talking to your government, paying your taxes, a lot of these things that you would imagine that can happen in an offline space can actually happen very easily digitally in China. And I think there's a lot of spillover also to Southeast Asia, to Korea, Japan. Those are all very, very digitally native countries. And in North America and in Europe, I think things because I think the pressure of economic development and innovation, a lot of that is very hard pressed in Asian places. So that's why I think you'll see a lot of these innovations coming from this side of the world versus in North America, very heavily in Europe. A lot of things are very much debated, especially in privacy.
Mm.
And so that's why you might have different tech companies. I mean, Facebook has a paid version in Europe, and that exists nowhere else in the world because of data privacy concerns. And so that's why you might see those markets be a little less, a little slower to adopt some of these newer things.
But we are, I think, one thing with COVID, and obviously it's hard, it feels like that was a long time ago, but I do think that accelerated digital adoption, even in the West, across, I think of my mum, like she's 76, she's very much, I would say, relatively digitally savvy for her age group now. And I think that was a forced behavioral change. But bring it back to sort of AI and the impact it's having. Obviously, we talk a lot about it from a customer angle, but I also like to think about, and this series is really anchored around helping, the professionals, the CX professionals, marketing professionals, IT teams that are supporting those teams engage their customers more effectively. Really looking at how AI is going to be an enabler for them moving forward. Obviously, the media likes to stir up a lot of fear around AI and in recent times about job losses, etc. But I personally believe it's going to be an enabler. I see it even just in my own application of it from a personal, professional perspective, increasing my productivity rates. Well, I reckon 20 to 30%. So I'd love to get your views on how can professionals in retail leverage AI for their career growth, their skill enhancement, to ensure that they, don't get left behind with this new technology wave or capability that is being, provided to them. So how do you, I mean, I guess maybe how do you personally use AI to boost your own efficiency and save time? And what are some examples that folks that are listening today could potentially take away from that in how they might apply that to their own roles?
Yeah. I think the first sort of thing for many retail companies to do is just to level set. Like you said, if there's already many different definitions of what AI is around the world, there's going to be a lot more difference in what AI is and what it means to people, even within a company. because we have all experienced it in different ways. Some of us watched all the horrible movies that Hollywood put out, where they said there's a Terminator that's gonna kill somebody, or some, what was it, I, Robot or Ex Machina, that had the robot murdering
Yeah.
the main character. Sorry
Great
to spill
film,
the
actually. Ex Machina. I know which one you're talking about. Great film. Yeah.
but yeah, spoilers for that movie. So I think that's the thing, is a lot of people imagine that AI looks like that. It's the format of this hardware. It's super intelligent. It has consciousness. It will kill you. When in reality, we are so far away from that. Becoming a reality that might be, though, the goal of maybe a Sam Altman or one of these AI CEOs, not the killing part, but more so the achieving general intelligence part. But even standing where we are today, we're very far away from any type of AI system, even being able to have general artificial intelligence. And so, but what is right in front of us, and what we should be spending our time on, is learning about these different definitions, what LLMs are, what NLP is, what parameters are, tokens are, how do you train things, reinforcement learning, things like that. And I've always known or thought that when we go to college, we're not learning for the knowledge set that we're getting from our education, but instead we're trying to learn how to learn better, because I think that skill set is going to be so important in the future. And I think that's not just for any knowledge worker, but people especially that's working in the retail space, as a space that is constantly changing every day. That if you're unable to catch up to the latest trend or innovation and know what it is, and if it's actually helpful for your business, then it is very easy to be left behind. In a lot of my keynotes, so I do a lot of keynotes as a keynote speaker, I often show these two different versions of a future startup hierarchy or org chart. So in one, where it's 6 different roles. The CEO is a person, and then everything else is a chat GPT. But I always preface that that's a meme, and that's not an immediate future. It's something for fun. But I show this other actual future hierarchy, which is this org chart where you have the CEO, the C-suite, and these different departments. But within these different departments, if you click the down arrow or expand upon the team, you'll see the humans, the human workers, but you'll also see these agents that's going to augment the team. And I think that is definitely something that's coming our way, where more and more teams with humans are going to be adding agents when they want to expand on something, when they want to expand on a new project, or instead of adding that headcount, but thinking of adding agents instead.
Actually, again, so many great nuggets shared there. I loved your point around learning. I can't remember how you phrased it, but almost adaptive learning. Like we need to become more adaptive in how we learn, and ultimately realize that never really stops. Right? I'm 53 now. One thing that I've always been passionate about is constantly keeping an open mind to new ideas, new capabilities, and exploring how they can help me evolve individually or as part of a team. So I think that's really quite important, right, Sharon? Like that we keep a growth mindset, and apply that to now how AI could potentially be used at an individual level. And I think that really love that point you made around just being always open to exploring new ideas is really important. And in terms of, I guess, as you sort of touched on, obviously you get to work with a lot of leaders. How do you encourage them to get their teams behind incorporating AI into their day-to-day work, operations? Is there any particular conversations you've been having recently, or approaches that you've been using with leaders to help drive them towards having a growth mindset when it comes to AI?
Yeah. I think a lot of leaders are definitely asking that. Um, the question I get asked a lot is how do I get my team to start thinking about it? And I always tell them the idea of creating an AI council and starting out with having your AI council draft an AI policy for the company. Some companies are in some companies, leaders will fight to be the chair of that council, and some companies, they're sort of shirking from the idea. And so I think, but I think that's a great place to start in forming these internal councils where the company itself can become more literate in AI literacy and know more about what's happening. And it's also important to create these councils where they're made up of very diverse individuals, so that it's not just the C-suite, or that it's not just people of a certain management level, but that it's sort of multi-department, or very multi-department encompassing everyone from the data team, the IT team, so the team that you might think would head up this council, but at the same time involving people who might be in logistics or design or supply chain. And then also always having a leader, someone from leadership sponsoring it. I think the conversations that you have there would be a lot more fruitful and just diverse.
Again, I've shared some wonderful insights that really resonate with me, and also the experiences I'm having within Twilio. This is Twilio as a company has been very progressive in leaning into AI from the leadership down, and a lot of what you touched on was absolutely essential in how they approached it, in terms of really actually, maybe doing something that sounds kooky, but bringing the employees along on the journey, at all levels. So I think you mentioned that, and I couldn't agree more with that. Basically, our guiding principle in how we use AI is really anchored against this, idea of transparency. And how we've done that is really looked at, bringing cross-functional teams together, to really, as you said, shape an understanding of how we can use AI, whether that's within our own products that we obviously, provide our customers, but also how we use AI within the business as a tool. So really, I would summarize sort of what I heard there with you, which sort of resonates with me, in the sense that being transparent, being responsible, and ultimately being accountable is really quite critical. Creating and bringing your wider employee base on that journey, and crafting an educational, or educating them on how to use AI responsibly, both at an individual but also at a business level, is what I heard there. So that's really wonderful insights you shared there. If we move now into sort of thinking about AI, we've sort of touched on sort of what AI is, what it means to the industry. We've talked a little bit about people there. When it comes to actually application of AI from a sort of a process perspective, and obviously retailers, one of the key areas of investment for them is supply chain. Really thinking about how can retailers use AI to streamline processes and optimize their operations, and ultimately drive profitable revenue. Are there any insights there, or thoughts, or examples that you can share?
Yeah, I think what you'll see in the future for retail is more and more the play of robotics in store. We've already seen that a lot from a China perspective, but from a U.S. or Europe perspective, Sam's Club is a company that's employed a lot of different types of robots in their systems, whether it's in their warehouse in terms of packaging and packaging orders, but also in store. So in the US, empty store shelves was a huge problem during COVID, where if you went to a Sam's Club, Costco, Walmart, what have you, you'll have these completely empty shelves, whether it was diapers or milk powder or rice, and that was due to global supply chain and just a shortage of certain SKUs. But even as we rebounce back from pandemic times, empty store shelves is still a very large problem. It costs the US about $80 billion a year. And so to solve that problem, a company called Brain Corp has gotten more and more popular, where they're doing a lot of scanning for store shelves. And these robots are serving two purposes. So one, they are functioning like that Roomba vacuum, where they're vacuuming the floor. And in a supermarket, there's so many different spills, and rice packages will be ripped open, and things have to be cleaned. But the more important part is the scanning of store shelves. So actually noticing which SKUs are being purchased faster or slower, which SKUs needs to be updated, which SKUs are expiring. And in knowing some of these rates, BrainCorp has this also back-end software system that connects to the purchasing department of this supermarket chain, that then informs this purchasing team. You need to now restock, or you need to couple certain orders together and send it to XYZ location, to restock the shelves in a more timely manner. And then from a China perspective, so there's a supermarket called Hema, or Fresh Hippo. If you ever get the chance to go to China, that's definitely a store I would recommend going to visiting, because it dwells in the area of something we call new retail. Which is a very elegant balance between online shopping and tying that together with offline shopping. So in these Huma stores, not only do you have people sort of running to and fro packing online orders, but a lot of their price tags that you would see is a digital banner. And that price changes every day or so, whenever there's, depending on the inventory levels. And so, for instance, if a certain type of durian was very, very highly in demand because of, I don't know, it's some sort of celebratory season where people are eating a lot of durians, then the price might go up because we have a lot lower supply, but there's a lot of high demand for this particular SKU.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of great examples there that you've shared. And also what I think you called out, which is another important thing to think about when we talk about AI, is the convergence of different technologies and capabilities. Robotics being another one there, I think, is a really good point to illustrate, because often we think of AI more in the sort of, I guess, a application perspective. But, in terms of it, robotics is quickly evolving very fast alongside that. And obviously it's a machine learning AI. It plays a key role in enabling those robots to perform the services that you sort of touched on there. And interestingly, again, another reason this is important, I think, for folks to understand is if you look at global birth rates are in decline across most of the world. So this is where I do feel AI and robotics are going to play such an important role going forward. Hence why the importance of investing now and understanding how their application, because the reality is that we are seeing less folks coming through, right, to be able to perform some of these roles, etc., that we've historically leaned on human labor to perform. So, and you touched on this earlier, and when you talked about agents, and robots will play a role there in that respect. So great examples. I love you sharing that. Maybe if we flip to now thinking of it in the context of customer service, in terms of everyday examples that you're seeing also, like in terms of retailers, are you seeing a clear directional move into incorporating AI capabilities into how they serve customers, in terms of whether it's through contact centers or enabling, retailers or retail associates in store to have more meaningful conversations? Is that something you're seeing a definite trend towards?
Yeah, I think a lot of retailers now are changing the way that their even homepages are displayed, and Taobao definitely did that because of the proliferation of and the ubiquity of and how much we're using a prompt to get to our answer versus the traditional way of searching in a traditional database. Walmart is definitely a company that's released this or will be releasing this feature where instead of going to the Walmart homepage and clicking on certain items, adding that to your basket, and then checking out, it's starting with a question or a prompt of why are you here, what are you here to find. And say if you are shopping for a party, you're a mom and you're very busy and you are just giving the AI system or this chatbot context. So I'm throwing a party for 20 people. There's going to be 10 kids. They like Spider-Man. I got to have balloons. This is somebody's birthday. You're describing your context and your situation, that then Walmart will take and sort of give you a ideal basket for you to check out with. That's something that I think will more popularly see rolling out in more and more platforms.
No, I couldn't agree more. And as we look forward, I think in when it comes to embracing and incorporating AI, both from a predictive and generative AI perspective, I think it's important that the audience understands just how important data will be going forward. I think it's most folks would say, "Oh, that's obvious," but the reality is, we know businesses are still struggling with being able to integrate the data that is available in their businesses. I mean, Gartner coined a term which I really love. I use in a lot of my talks, and I've used in previous episodes, this notion of dark data. They define dark data as basically information organizations collect, process, and store, but fail to use for other purposes. They don't integrate that data. Like marketing's using data over here, you got product teams over here, so they're really not integrating that data in a way that enables them to really unlock the blue veins of richness that does exist in there. So I think that's an area retailers do struggle with, to actually make the most of their data. I mean, again, a lot of sort of data retailers are traditional bricks and mortar data. Bricks and mortar retailers have separate e-commerce teams, for example, still,
Mhm.
right, even to this day, which I find crazy. Right, they're not operating together in a harmonized way. So can you share some experiences and advice on how folks that are listening to hear this can go back into their businesses and start to drive some change in that area?
Yeah, so in 2016, it was Jack Ma that created this term called New Retail, and I shared a little bit about Huma and Fresh Hippo, how they're sort of an epitome or a caricature of what New Retail can become. Even though they are a offline supermarket, 50% of their sales or orders actually come from online, which is a very, very high number for a traditional supermarket chain. But the concept of new retail is that, or what Jack had thought is that in the future, we're not gonna, a customer has no differential, cannot decipher the difference between interacting with a brand in an offline environment versus interacting with this brand in an online environment. This person just cares, how do I get my product at the best price and the best context whenever I want to, so that it could be delivered to me very quickly. And so as a brand then, or as a retailer, you also have to sort of think in that and think in those shoes, is how can I unite different elements of my online and offline together, whether that's giving the customer a similar set of SKUs, a similar set of promotions, a similar service level, whether it's in store or online. I think a really good brand that's done this really well is called Perfect Diary. They are a publicly traded company, and they actually have several different brands, but their most prominent brand is called Perfect Diary. It's a cosmetics brand for Gen Z, younger women who are very digitally savvy. They're very, very heavy on TikTok, Douyin, Little Red Book, Instagram. And they start and maybe their sort of benefit was that they started off online. They started off as a Tmall store, and then they went into the offline space and ran their own stores. But they do a very good job of syncing all of that together. So the suite of SKUs that you see in their online site is exactly mirrored to that of their offline. A lot of their offline sales associates will also, whenever somebody walks into a store, try very, very hard to have this person log in or sign in so that they know exactly which originally was an online consumer actually walked into their offline location, have them be part of their backend CRM, join their loyalty program so that they can then send this person a certain touch point or offer when this person has left the mall or left that store and now they're back home. And maybe now it's 618 season, which just passed, or it's Double 11 coming up soon, to send a trigger for them to repurchase again. And just to have that very seamless online to offline experience, because these two avenues serve different, sometimes they serve different use
And
cases.
what do you think? I mean, that's an awesome example, by the way. And what you described there is something I'm really passionate about, is this idea of a channelless customer experience. Because, I mean, Sharon, I don't know about you, but I don't think in terms of channels. Like when I engage a brand, I want to, as you just sort of beautifully described, move between these different touch points, whether it's physical, digital, in a seamless way, right? I really want to be able to, find the answer to the question, whether that starts with a chat bot, me then moving into, if it's a high consideration purchase, into having a conversation with a human, right? So I think what you described there is, really an important point for folks to understand. If they're going to really next level their experience, they need to think in this sort of channelist sort of mindset. What is the biggest inhibitor in your experience when it comes to why brands struggle with that? Because obviously it sounds obvious, right? What we just touched on there. Why do you think businesses are still struggling with this? Because I mean, customer experience has been around for a while now, and retail has been one of the pioneering industries when it comes to that. So why do you think they're still struggling with this?
I think it's people. There's always a lot more friction with swallowing something that's a bit newer or harder to um, grasp, or whatever came later. And most retailers, so unless we're talking about e-commerce brands and why this still happens, that's sort of its own issue. But in the world of retail, offline stores came first.
Mm-hmm.
The POS system back in the day was a very, very archaic piece of technology that was made by Toshiba, that also had the back end software that all these associates would use and that somebody in headquarters had to download and put together. So, um, uh, in the US, at least, most retailers are still using some sort of system that's similar to that. And so when digital came on, when the whole Amazon entered the scene, .com, shopping on websites, when that took off, although from a consumer standpoint, it seems very ubiquitous, especially what happened during COVID. But on the back end, and especially the back end for one of these large brands or retailers, it's still a lot of different systems, and you have to tie all of that together. And then now there's this things that are happening in the AI space. It's sort of yet another thing to look at. I think a lot of retailers are playing catch up, and they're still playing catch up. And I think they're finding it hard to compete with maybe a more nimble, a smaller brand that's sort of just emerged out of nowhere and was able to be very digitally savvy and use some of these more advanced tools. And so, but that's also why they were able to get to their market share as quickly as they did, because they were born later. And I think going back to what I was saying earlier, I think that's what ultimately technology does, is it democratizes us all.
Actually, I remember article written by Mark Andreessen. I think I've referenced this before as well, but folks haven't read it, Google it. Software's eating the world, right? And I remember I was actually in Thailand on holiday. I remember sitting by the pool reading this article, and it really connected with me because he talked about the opportunity for businesses to reimagine their traditional businesses through the lens of being almost a software company and how they use software to reimagine the way they operate. Because the examples you've given in terms of sort of digital first companies, that's what they've done really. Like, and again, if we just go to Airbnb, Uber, etc., they're really great examples of brands that have disrupted by coming at solving the problem through a software first type mindset. But here's the thing, and for the traditional retailers, the message here isn't, oh, if I'm in traditional retail, maybe I should rethink my career. No, in actual fact, there's a huge strategic advantage that they have, which is already pre-existing brands that have been established and well known, and ultimately have a significant value, but also the fact they do have physical presences, because even though consumers are leaning into digital a lot more, there is, and we see this if you look at e-commerce trading data, people still are going back into retail, right, into shopping malls, and because there is an experiential element that you can't recreate through a digital mobile app or website, right? Like there is that human interaction. There is, I want to go with my friends and maybe buy some clothes or grab a bite to eat. So that's where I think there's a strategic advantage for the traditional bricks and mortar businesses to think about how they incorporate the digital and physical. And we've touched on this earlier, I think, and bringing those worlds together. And that requires knocking down the internal silos, right, Sharon? That, because again, I think a lot of what you spoke to there is driven just also by the siloed nature of how we organize our businesses traditionally. Is that a fair comment?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely not to say that offline is not the good place to be. It's actually a very, very coveted place.
Yeah.
I live in New York. I live right by Soho, and just day in, day out, it would be like month one, I'm seeing this brand for the first time on TikTok Shop. And then by month 6 or 7, I'm seeing the brand wanting to open a store, or at least it's a pop-up of some sort where they want to display the product in person. They're trying to create some sort of in-person mechanism where they're trying to get me to go to their store to experience the product. And so you'll see, or we have already seen so many of these different online brands wanting to go into physical retail because that's where they are absent. And that's a permanent store is sometimes the best way to advertise yourself because of the foot traffic, or because you are so close to that ultimate end customer, whereas you can't get that level of interaction as you would online through a screen. No matter how good that live streamer is talking about the product, you can't experience that brand the same way you can offline. So
No, and
absolutely.
yeah, so again, I think we agree on that. I mean, so yeah, for the bricks and mortar stores, there's definitely a bright future. It's more about leaning into understanding how you can unlock the capabilities technology brings to the table. And certainly that starts at leadership as well, need to be playing a role there. I think also the other thing when we talk about data, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is obviously there's different types of data, right? And, in previous sessions, I've sort of touched on this, that retailers need to think about, in particular, two data sets that I think are increasingly becoming important. Zero and first party data. Obviously, with Google's relegation of third party data into, becoming potentially in the near future very, obsolete, not being something that we can lean in on, certainly as a marketer, I've had to start thinking about what other data sets can I use to more effectively engage my customers and prospects, and therefore zero and first party data is becoming increasingly important. And just for a reminder for those that aren't familiar with those two concepts, I mean, zero party data is a newer term that sort of popped up on the scene. First party being obviously the my click stream data, my order history, etc. This is data that I'm sharing with the brand directly. A lot of that I'm sharing subconsciously or not consciously, but it is data that I'm comfortable in sharing with the business because I have a relationship or interaction, with that brand. The data, zero party data for me is becoming that's the true golden data. It's not, that working with your first party data it will create value. It's not one or the other. You need both. But zero is really that personal data, Sharon, that I share with you, that gives you a real rich insight in terms of, what I'm trying to achieve. Maybe I'm, like currently I'm trying to shift some of my weight. So if I load up a health app and, I put in my sort of, weight goals and objectives and the types of training I'm doing, that's very personal data. It's zero party data. So I guess I'd love to get your thoughts on, do you agree again that this is an area of importance for businesses to be thinking about, not just in terms of grabbing all the data that's out there, but making sure they're grabbing the right data to be able to use that in a way that gets the best out of predictive and generative AI? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. When I use Taobao, so when I moved back to China, I started using Taobao. So Taobao is synonymous to Tmall. It's the Amazon of China. And I was scrolling through my kind of my for you page, but it's like a waterfall version where it's endless scrolling. It doesn't end because that's how the product was made. Is they made it an endless scroll because they just want you to keep scrolling forever and browsing products. That I would be scrolling sometimes, and a couple of scrolls later, there would be like a little question that pops up that asks, "Did you like this product?" And then I would have to click yes or no to exit away from the screen. And then a couple of scrolls later, they almost like a little survey would come up and ask me, so do you like this style better or do you like this style better? And you do like a little swipe. So when I first, as a consumer on the consumer side, when I first interacted with that, it heavily reminded me of those market research surveys. Those market research surveys that sometimes consumers would take in exchange for your hour's time. You get like a $50 Amazon gift card or something back in the day. And I think zero party data is very similar, but it's even done in a more subtle way, because you can ask a potential customer a series of survey questions and they're seated in their study and they're going through question after question, multiple choice, this one I'm inputting a couple words, but it's very mechanical almost, because you're removing your customer from their natural environment and plopping them in this very like data pulling exercise almost. And I don't know about you, but sometimes when I answer those questions, I'm not being as truthful as I actually am, because I'm not in my natural environment. Whereas I think when a tech company or when a retailer does zero party data very well, they're doing it in such a subtle way that in that moment of me scrolling, that probably was my genuine response as to whether I was interested in that item or I wasn't. And I think that type of data probably takes a lot more priority in that machine learning algorithm when it's trying to queue up newer brands or newer products to show me. Because I am proactively telling the platform what I like and what I don't like. And it will be coupled with my order history and the things I actually clicked on and searched for. But that, I think, is something that very few retailers probably know how to do well, and not be as disruptive to a current customer journey or interaction. And so that is definitely something that more and more companies will try to figure out.
Yeah, and the reality is now that, and I'm not going to go into a product pitch for the audience here, but this is an area exactly where Twilio is investing significantly and has actually got the capabilities. As you're talking to a customer through whether it's a AI chatbot or through agent serving a customer, the recording of that conversation can identify that zero party data that they're sharing through maybe the script that's been designed to help surface some of that up in a more natural way, right? That's your point there, which is exactly what you want, right? And the key here, though, I think, and which is absolutely critical for folks to want to share that data or be willing to share that data, they've got to see some kind of utility back, right? They've got to see a value add back. And I think this is, as a marketing leader, that's, I cherish that data that I'm collecting. And it's really important that we create value for our customers and prospects in how we use that data. So I guess there's an element of responsibility on brands to really understand if they want their customers or prospects to share that data, they've got to be able to create value, but also create trust as a result of that in demonstrating how that they're going to look after that data responsibly and in an ethical way. So I think this is an exciting new frontier. I think the brands that are really, and if I look at our customers that are really pioneering and doing some really cool stuff, they're really understanding this area. So thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. Look, one thing I knew when coming into this call, Sharon, is that you and I could talk for hours on this. And I'm just mindful of your time and as well as the audience's time here. I've got a couple of final questions I want to fire off at you. Looking ahead, what are some of the exciting trends or innovations in AI that you believe will have the most impact on retail and e-commerce? I mean, any quick fire thoughts on that from your side?
Yeah, all the retail e-commerce side is talking about these days is personalization, and the past couple of months it's turned into hyper personalization. And it makes sense. I mean, with all of the things that's happening in the e-commerce space. Often also in my keynotes, I often share these two photos of this store called Pop Mart. If you have heard of that toys company, it's like a blind box.
Okay. Yeah.
So the collectible space is a very big space right now, where these are adults that will buy these little figurines, and because it's a blind box, so the packaging is the same, but the little character or the little figurine is going to change. And a lot of people like to buy that and collect that, because when you're unboxing it, it's a surprise. You don't really know which one you got. So it's also a very sticky product, and it's a very addictive product because you never know which one you're going to get. And so I always so I always share this Pop Mart example of when I open the Pop Mart store inside Tmall, what it looks like, and when my niece opens it and what it looks like. And it's two entirely different looking stores. Because of the difference in age range, the different types of graphics that I usually like to see. So something that's shown to her is a little more cartoony. It's a little more almost metaverse visuals seeming, whereas for me, and a lot of the things that I see in my version is more realistic photos or realistic products, because I like to actually see what the product that I'm getting actually looks like. And a lot of that is happening and that's all made available by things like Gen AI, where you can tune the face of your brand to whichever customer is visiting your store. And by turning the tune of your brand, you'll probably increase conversion rates will usually go up because you're connecting with them easily.
I couldn't agree more. And this is where, again, back to the earlier point where we're talking about, getting that sort of orchestration of zero and first party data will enable you to move beyond that personalized experience to really individualizing it. We're talking a lot about, moving beyond personalization and individualizing the experience. And I think then harnessing that predictive and generative AI is where, again, you're going to be able to accelerate and scale that capability, right? Even right down to the ads, sort of your point between you and your husband, right? Again, having ads that are more tailored to the individual. Now, that's tough at the moment if I'm a marketing leader, because normally I get 2 or 3 different creatives that I get to work with because my budget constrains me. But generative AI is going to allow me to create 1,000 iterations of that same ad for all the different types of because even in a Gen X, like I'm a Gen X, like, but not all Gen X is the same, right? So, not all male Gen X is the same. So again, being able to really, to your point, hyper personalize, individualize that engagement is going to be important. And this is where the dance between predictive and generative AI is going to become increasingly important. Look, Sharon, I really want to thank you for taking your time out, sharing your insights. Highly recommend folks go and check your content out. I've actually subscribed to your newsletter. So really appreciate you providing and also sharing those insights with the community. I want to thank everyone that's joined us today on Decoding AI. Please take a few moments out and share your thoughts by completing the survey that is coming up right after this. We really appreciate your feedback. Ultimately, I really want to know what are the topics you want to hear more about. What areas of AI do you want us to double click in? Share any insights on what's been great for you, but also what you were hoping to hear and you would like to hear. We're starting to build a really excellent library of content for you. So again, the team will have that surfaced up for you within the resource center for you to be able to access. And don't worry, this is not the last episode. We've got more planned for you coming down the pike. So again, look out for future episodes, but also take a look at, if this is your first episode, go and have a check out some of the previous episodes, because everyone we're interviewing are genuine thinkers in this space that are bringing really different perspectives, whether it's retail today, financial services. We're really looking at a broad spectrum of perspectives when it comes to decoding AI. So yeah, really thank you for taking the time out. And again, Sharon, wish you a great evening ahead. I know it's late your time, so thanks for taking time out. And for those that have dialed in, again, thank you for joining us today, and I hope to see you on the next episode. Take care.